evening. Welcome into another night. Hold, hold on. Ooh, never mind. Ah, man, too many windows open. That's what it was. Yeah. Hello, Mama D. Still trying to figure out this double platform. Um, and just waiting to see who can actually get in and who can't. I see you got through. Did you come through the link on an email? Because there must be a webinar site that it goes to besides. So, which means I have to block people off of YouTube. Yeah, that's the way it's supposed to work, which because it still shows on YouTube, but you have to have the link. You actually have the link for the thing. So if you haven't registered or you don't have the link to the YouTube, okay. Well, okay. Well, that's something interesting new. I think I am going to put it back to public, but at least now I know how it works. I kind of figured this was that way people can come in on it, and I wanted to keep it to people that are registered, but I wasn't really sure how this was going to work out. But now I know how. Now I know how it will, but it'll still register and go to YouTube. I just have to change it over to public once the webinar is over with. Plus the fact the webinar is recording it as we're doing it. So hopefully we'll get some others. Jason Thibodeau, welcome in, buddy. Now see, Jason came through. Now how come you ain't blue and Jason's blue? Now I don't see him in the Jason, did you come through? You're showing YouTube. Are you? Hold on one second. Ooh, I'm just curious, Deb. What are you looking at on your screen? Is it the YouTube version or is it a diff something? Okay, you've come through YouTube. What are you looking at, Deb or Debbie? I'm trying to figure this out, guys. So I know I'm trying to figure this because I was noticing today when I was going through everything to finalize it. Um, how did Captain Mickey Mouse get in here? How did you? Okay, Captain Mickey Mouse, you didn't register. How did you get into it? Because the YouTube site, I'm just curious I'm just curious, how did you get into YouTube? Because it's on private. Unless you have the link for it, you shouldn't have been able to get in. I'm just curious. I have no problem with you being here. I'm glad you're here. I'm just trying to figure this out because when I start doing seminars, I'm keeping it to a minimum. When I do the webinars, I'm trying to keep it to only people that registered. Because that's like Dave Stragan. He came in earlier. So you got through YouTube too. Jason, how did you get through? Okay, you came through YouTube too. It showed 4 watching. It just ain't showing anything in the chat. So I'm kind of, give me 1 second, guys. I'm trying to figure out what's. We're going to get going here in a minute. Yep. Yep. There you go. It's showing it. Jonathan got in. See, I don't know how any of you guys are getting. I'm going to have to watch that then. Okay. I'm going to have to make sure it's private and make sure it gets blocked off. So, because none of you guys should have been able to get in without registering. But it may have something to do with a webinar. So, I know. Give me 1 second, guys. I'm trying something here because I need to see where this is going. Dee. Okay. All right. That would explain it. Debbie came through the link. She is actually, now I see what happens. No, I'm glad you guys are all here. But it was trying, I had to figure out how to. You click the StreamYard link without registering. Did you have to register, Captain Mickey Mouse? Because it's surprising that it did not update it. Because I know I could get through there. I just did it with my own email. That's weird. I'll have to talk to them and figure it out. Yeah, I meant to put it I meant to block it. You guys should not have seen it at all. I meant to block it. I didn't go in. I didn't. It's blocked now. It is YouTube. Well, I think. Wait, hold on. Okay. Now it's blocked. Now nobody's getting in. Not without having to register. That's weird. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna have to look at that because it has something to do when if I share it to the other one, I'm gonna have to put the YouTube on private, and that link will have to be shared out. So there will actually be 2 links. So I know what I got to do now. All right, but let's go ahead and get it started. Glad you guys are all here. Hopefully Jonathan didn't come out, because if he didn't, he's going to need the link to get in. All right, guys, welcome in. Like I said, this is the first time I've tried it on the webinar. It actually records this. I may just end up doing it on the webinar, so everybody will have to watch it. And because then what will happen is then I'll have to download it, then download it to. I'll have to get with StreamYard and see how that works. All right. Anyways, welcome in, guys. Tonight is the night of the webinar. Yeah, you know what? Give me 1 second. I am going to put it back in public. Now that I know what I got to do, I got a couple of questions. I'll have to ask StreamYard when I'm done. All right, guys. Here's the thing. I know he's registered. Where's my sister? My sister's registered. But anyways, okay. I know we talked a lot about this information. I'm going to bring it up. Welcome to the first seminar, guys, for beginning cruisers tips and tricks. This is serious. This is something that I tried to push out as much as I can. I'll figure out how to do it as I get better. Obviously, I can control things from my system, so I don't have to watch the chat anymore, especially with slides. We for the longest time we've talked about traveling. We've talked about we've talked about using a travel advisor, not a travel advisor. There's pros and cons to all that, which we'll be looking at a few things. But a lot of this is tips to think about. Whether you use a travel advisor, whether you don't use a travel advisor, and decide to do things that you need to keep an eye. Hopefully, you'll learn some new information. So here we go. So beginning cruisers, trips and tricks. This is presented by the Cantrell Country Travelway. If you're new to my channel, thank you. Welcome. It's good to see y'all. And if you will be giving out my things, I am a travel agent. I am the owner and agent and owner of the Cantrell Country Travelway. And we're glad to see y'all here. Yes, they can see it on YouTube because I did put it publicly now. So whoever comes in and out of over there is more than welcome to watch it over there. I kind of know what I need to do, but I'll have to talk with StreamYard when I'm done about how do I get it from the webinar site transferred over to, yeah. Okay. Well, no, that's curiosity because it was it was, and it might only have to do that the fact that if it's private, it goes to a webinar site. So, but then I posted it on YouTube. So I'm going to have to figure out how to do that when I do a webinar. But welcome in, guys. So talking about beginning trips and tricks, guys, some of the first things, it can be overwhelming for anybody that's new to the cruising thing. Yeah, it's because I changed it in and out, Dave. Um, Technically, I had scheduled this one to be a webinar, and for trying to get reaching out to people that are new things. You should be okay now. You should be able to talk. Everything is everything is private, or everything is back to public, so you should be okay. Um, but why is my chat not working right? There we go. Live chat. Yeah. No, 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 no. You're okay. You're okay. It's more than it's fine. It's things that I had to learn with tonight. This is the first webinar. It's that's why anybody, I encourage you guys to register for the webinar. I just had to figure out how to do the webinar and then get it over to YouTube, because that's basically when I do, and I've been talking about it all week long, that when I do business development managers, we're going to be doing it as a webinar. When I specifically talk about Disney, when I talk about specific cruise lines, I'm going to be doing it as a webinar. When I talk about specific ships, I'll do that on the cruise line show. So I'm still learning a few tricks and trades on the thing, but that's okay. Now, I'm glad you guys are here. I'm glad everybody's here. Hopefully, we'll get some more to join us. Hopefully, there's some more. Okay, Debbie switched over to. You could have stayed in the webinar, Debbie. Eventually, that's where it's going to be all at, and then you'll have to use the link. Um, I think next time I just got to figure out how I'm going to be able to transfer it, and I'll talk to StreamYard when I do it. So I'm actually streaming in both places now. But when it's a new client and a new client comes into the area, one of the first things they really, oh, you're in both? Okay. Well, that's good. Um, oh, you are in both. Okay. That's cool. Um, when there are things people are looking at it, sometimes people don't know whether to use a travel advisor or not. Um, like I said, when I was working on a client back in December, as soon as I got, or January, when I was looking to work on a client, the client had already booked through a certain cruise line, and they went through the app. So that took me out of the picture. I can't help them with anything after that. So the thing about it is, when a person decides to use a travel advisor or do research planning and booking themselves, which again, one of the things you'll be looking at, it becomes time consuming versus using a travel advisor, and whether you want to put in that time yourself to do it, which if you, in order to find the real good deals, because the first thing, you're going to have to look at all the different cruise lines, and there's so many different cruise lines. I mean, and I mean, you've got Viking, you've got Royal Caribbean, you got Carnival, you got MSC, you you got Celebrity, and these are just some of them. You've got Canard, um, you got Holland of America, you got the Norwegian cruise lines. Now, some of these cruises are not for everybody. The thing when it comes down to them, where the research and the planning comes into, is finding which brand is your brand. Which brand do you want to try? Because you may go on one cruise and find out you love cruising, but you may not necessarily enjoy that cruise. These are the things that you have to look at when you're researching, planning, and booking on yourselves. I mean, because whether you use a travel advisor or whether you do yourself, both of them have advantages and disadvantages, which we'll look at some of those tonight as we're doing this. But I do want to welcome everybody in, and let's welcome in Captain Mickey Mouse. Let's welcome in Dave Stragan, Jason Thibodeau. Um, who else am I missing? Did Jonathan Chong, who I think is eating or doing something, and he said he'd be back right back. Hopefully, we'll get Paul in here. Hopefully, we'll get my sister in here. Um, hopefully maybe they may join. Debbie, did you guys get the email yesterday, and did you get an email an hour before on those? Just curious. Let me know if you did. Obviously, you got the link for it. So because you were in the webinar. So with that looking at the advantages, some of the things, before we dive into the looking at the advantages and disadvantages, one of the big things that you have to think about is the time consuming sitting there. I mean, because some of you guys are dealing with family, you work full time, depending on what your jobs are, you're taking care of households, business, um, which can be time consuming. Um, so looking at an advantage and disadvantages of using a travel advisor is a good thing. Sometimes you can get better luck doing it yourself, though it is time consuming, and that's one of the things we'll be looking at. Obviously, not just time consuming, but there's things that you will want to be thinking about because as you're going through the process of looking, you're going to be looking at what cruise line fits me. What type of am I looking for a cruise to just relax? There's questions that you're going to be asking yourself, or, as a travel advisor, there's questions I'm going to be asking you as a first time cruise person. And so these are the things that you're looking at, especially when you're sitting down with them for the first time, whether you're using a travel advisor online or whether you're using going into a physical building of a travel advisor. These are questions that you're going to be asking, and there's a lot of things that you're going to be wanting. Some of the things that we're going to be looking tonight are just some of the steps and some of the questions that you're going to be looking at. It's not everything. These are just hopefully some tips that you guys will get. This is kind of a learning curve. That's why I was hoping to get some. Hopefully, we'll get some people that'll rewatch this as we're going through. So, couple of advantages of not using a travel advisor. Obviously, you can save money. The one big thing about you not using a travel advisor is now I don't personally do that with my company, though I can legally on the end of a commission, I can actually I can bump up service. I can actually do service charges for for a client to use my services as a travel advisor, but I don't do that. I take the straight up commission that I get off of whatever trip or itinerary that they book. Um, I mean, that is one of the things that you do look at. You do save money of not having to pay certain fees. Another might be able to find, obviously, looking through, as you're researching what ships to do and what type of deals there are there to, if you kind of have an idea of what itinerary you're looking for or plan that you're wanting, maybe what kind of ports you want to stop at, or what type of adventures you want to do. You may already know some of that. So then, you may spend that time in finding decent deals. You can actually find good deals doing the research and taking the time to do it and really looking at it. Will you catch all the deals? No, because there's a there that's we'll look at that in a minute. That is going to be one of the disadvantages um, in not using a travel advisor, because there's some things that we'll talk about here in a little bit. It also can take time when you are doing this and seriously looking at this. If I will say that women tend to be more like this. They tend to be thorough when they're searching, and some guys are. Some guys are thorough when they're planning trips, especially if they're doing like exotic trips. Not so much. I won't say so much as domestic trips, but when you're doing cruising, or maybe you're traveling to Europe, Australia, Alaska, Antarctica. Maybe you're traveling to Central America, wherever you're traveling. Those things take time to research and plan and things like that. Which means then not only are you looking for the deals, but then you're having to take time to plan you know, flights, car rentals, if maybe hotel stay, hotels, if you go a day or two before the cruise, which all travel agents will tell you, your best advice is to always, when you book a cruise, always to get there a day or two before. And if necessary, if you go to a place, maybe look around the cultural. Maybe you're in a brand new city that you've never been to, like maybe you've never been to Miami or Fort Lauderdale. They've got a lot of cultural background. So maybe you're taking a ship out of Tampa, Fort Lauderdale, Miami, or Galveston. You know, you may never been to those cities. Well, take your time. Come down 2 or 3 days ahead of time. Go around. Yes, it's very important to get there early. Not just the day of embarkation, but if you really want to get a good night's sleep the day before the cruise takes off. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, you know. So those are the things that you're wanting to think about when you're planning it. You know, the one thing about it is you don't want to insert. Unfortunately, sometimes they look, people actually think, what they ask the travel advisors, what do you think? What do you want this? Well, sometimes by doing the research on your own, you don't have that stuff getting in a way where, because especially if you're first time cruisers, some clients tend to maybe ask, well, what do you think? I mean, what do you think about this or that? And, it's not about the travel advisor. It's about the clients. It's about what they want. So it's not about not what I want. It's about what they want. And, sometimes you have to think about that. And sometimes when you are doing the researching, sometimes you can think about a lot of these questions as you're going through. And doing the researches does take time. It can take you. It may take you a few hours, and you may find the right deal and the right cruise line. Um, but there's a lot of other things you have to think about that you may not think about when you're doing it. But then you may, because part of planning, here's what you're planning. And here's where some of the disadvantages, like if you got medical conditions, um, you know, if you got medical conditions, obviously you're going to want to think about doing these things and making sure you talk with the cruise line and make sure maybe you need a wheelchair, or maybe you're having a scooter delivered to the cruise line. Well, those are things that you're going to want you're going to want to talk to the special customer services that deal with those situations, so that they can arrange to make sure that the scooter is brought on board, taken to there. And maybe you need things for medical conditions like a PAP machine and certain other things. Those are things that you'll want to think about, and be able to talk to the special customer services that will deal with those type of things on the trips. So obviously, some of the disadvantages of not, you know, those are some of the advantages to not using the travel thing. Now, here's some of the disadvantages of not using the travel things. The one thing is the disadvantaging some of the disadvantages to using a travel advisors. You may have to pay that fee um, for them to do the work and the planning and all that. But the travel advisors, when you're doing it, will come down to the fact that when you're doing these, they will ask all these questions. Do they'll find about how many are in the party. Do you have any specific adventures you want to do? Do you have any specific things you want to need medically or things like that? Um, they will ask the right questions to all that. Are you looking for a relaxing cruise? Because if it's an older couple, and a lot of it depends on the age of the travelers. If you got a family and that, you may think about the Disney Cruise Lines. If you got older people that have traveled before and want to look at travel, then obviously you may want to think about like they want to travel around the world. Those have older travelers who's now generation X and a little bit higher, and the baby boomers obviously will look at maybe Canard or maybe looking at Celebrity, where they're more relaxed and not so much party hardy. Now, maybe you're young married couples, no families, you're looking to celebrate anniversaries or birthdays, but yet you want that party. You want that thing. So then you're going to, and that's the type of questions and understanding that a travel advisor will ask you and understanding. So that's a disadvantage, but not the disadvantage because, again, you may have to pay those fees. Um, by not using the travel advisor, sometimes you may not find the best deals that a travel advisor can find. Because there are some things, like if you're traveling in a group, you may not think about talking to the cruise lines. You may tell them this and this. And if they're a good cruise lines, they'll tell you, well, you might want to think about doing a group thing. And these are things that a travel advisor will understand and ask. And sometimes they will be able to find deals that travel advisors only see that may even be better than what you may find on the app or the cruise line's main website. Obviously the travel advisor is going to look into it. So losing out on some better deals is another disadvantage of not using the travel advisors. As a travel advisor, the biggest thing that we talked about was time, research, planning. Well, sometimes some of that can become very stressful. Well, obviously, when you're planning a trip and getting ready for it, that becomes when you're trying to think about packing and making sure you got everything that you need, making sure the kids are packed, making sure, maybe your vehicles are in shape, making sure that the bills are, certain things that are ready to watch the house as you're doing it. Obviously, a travel advisor can save you that anxiety and stress by doing the work. By all you happen to do is going in there and kind of talking with a thing. A travel advisor can say, by saving you by the anxiety and the stress, by asking you these questions of what are you looking for generally over there? Are you looking for a relaxing cruise? Are you looking for an adventurous cruise? Are you looking for a party cruise? And that's where a advisor will sit down and talk with you. And sometimes if you don't use a travel advisor, that is a disadvantage because you're dealing with the anxiety and stress, especially if you're trying to look for some of this stuff. And with all the stress and the anxiety that we have just in our normal everyday lives of working, family, taking care of the needs. Maybe you got sick kids or sick pets. Maybe you're watching elderly parents. That becomes a lot of stress. And if you add trying to find a cruise and trying to find the right excursions and things like that, that can add added stress in the moment. Well, which is definitely a big major disadvantage. So, all right. As news cruisers, it always can be very hectic. There's so many choices. This world has become about choice, 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 choice. That's like the fast food restaurant when they started popping up everywhere. You got Taco Bell, you got Burger King, you got McDonald's, you got, you know, Chick-fil-A, you got Kentucky Fried Chicken, you got all these things. This world has come about choice, 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 choice. But we've got so many choices that in itself can talk about, um, and they're all competing for your business. And that's what the cruise lines do. They compete. So they throw out all these different things. I mean, and they're all going to say, we got these activities for the kids, and we got this for the adults, and we got this. The bottom line across the thing, a travel agent as is, and you can discover these things for yourself by looking. If you really do search, like if you let's say you look at Norwegian Cruise Line and then you seriously research the ship, you want to look at what do we got that's for the adults, what is for the kids, what type of activities on the ship. I mean, you know, some people may want the casinos, the gambling. Others may want dance clubs. Obviously, some will want shows and entertainment, and some may want comedy clubs. So it's important to be looking at those things when you're looking at that. And obviously, maybe you got some destinations. Obviously, and there's so many destinations in that. It comes down to what. And I guess what, as a travel advisor, my thing has come down to is what do you want to see at this point in time? I mean, especially if you're with so many different ports of calls that a lot of these cruise ships do. You got Bermuda, you got the Caribbean. Maybe you're doing a cruise over in the Mediterranean. Maybe you're doing a cruise around Australia, or maybe you're doing a special one down South America that goes to Antarctica. But you got your start ports and starts, but then you got how many nights do you want to cruise? I mean, for some people, and I always say when you're talking about first cruises and when you're talking, maybe you're doing your first, second, or maybe third one, a good advisor, and that's why you also talk to people that have traveled before. Talk to people that have been on cruises, and most of them will tell you that when you're doing your first time things, one of the big decisions is how long do you want to cruise? And most everybody, and then even including a good travel agent, will tell you'll want to do anywhere from a 3 to a 5 night cruise for the first time because there's so much just to do on ship itself. You can't discover everything aboard the cruises. There's just too much. I mean, with movie theaters and the entertainment shows and the activity, your activity centers for the kids and the adults and the families. And, you got the adult entertainment after that usually goes on after 10 o'clock. The deck parties that go on after 10 o'clock, and all that. There's so much, it becomes important to where do we want to go to this destination? Do we just want to do a short destination? And for the first time cruisers, I'm telling you, your best benefit, whether you use a travel advisor or not, your best benefit is to think about and do a 3 to 5 cruise maybe where you only do 1 day a sea. Like my first cruise that I ever did, it was a 5 day, 4 night cruise. We stopped at 2 ports, 1 day out at sea, and that was good enough. It was a 5 day. We left on a Friday morning. We came home on a Monday morning, and but it was absolute. And I can tell you, I still didn't get to discover everything that's on a ship, especially when you got spas, the different specialty restaurants that you might want to try. Those are things that you'll want. And if you and if you find the right cruise ship that you want to go back, then you're going to want to go back and try some of those specialty restaurants or whatever the situation is. Or maybe you missed a show that you wanted to see and you couldn't. So then you may end up going back on that show and try it again. Or you may discover another ship within their fleet of that same cruise line and go there. So choosing the right cruise line, the right destination is always a paramount thing. And these are some of the things that a travel advisor does look at, but these are also things that you want to look at as you're going. So one of the first things that we definitely want to look at when you're traveling, maybe you're traveling with a group. Here's the other thing. You also want to consider, especially when you're looking for the right cruise lines, guys, especially if you're a first time, maybe a second time or a third time. Are you traveling with a group? Are you traveling with a family? Or are you a solo travel? Because one of the first things that you'll want to look at, and the biggest thing that we are looking at, is the price ranges. You can't escape it. One of the biggest things you're going to be thinking about is the price ranges. And obviously you've got certain cruise lines that are a little bit more expensive and compared to other cruise lines where you're more mediocre on the cruises. I can tell you, Norwegian Cruise Lines, they have different pricings. Carnival, it depends on what ship, and you also have to think about what ship are you doing too. What is the itinerary and where they're going, which also plays a part in those prices. But it also depends on when you're thinking about that, because like as a travel advisor, I would say if you're traveling in a group, maybe you're going in a group of 20. Well, my first thinking is if you're doing a group, then let's talk with the cruise lines group person manager and see what kind of deals we can get on one. As a group, you can get group rates which may be lower than what a regular cruise line for someone that's traveling with, say, just a family or solo traveler. Which plus you get more perks. I mean, you also look, and the thing about it is the perks that you get along with some of the different advantages to some of these deals on what you're doing. So obviously, when you're looking at that, that's the thing you're considering. And when you're doing it, again, like if you're a first time through a third cruiser, you still may. Now, each time you cruise, you may add a day or two. Like if you're on your first cruise, you're obviously going to think about that 3 to 5 day cruise. And especially if you talk with family or friends that have cruised before, or if you talk to a travel advisor. But when you get to your second or third cruise, then you may up the days. I mean, like if it's your second or third cruise, you may decide to go, okay, let's go for a 7 to a 9 day cruise. Again, which is going to be a little bit more money, thinking about the money, but it also goes back to thinking about when you're looking at this, how much you're paying per person. And that is where we're also going to look at the next thing, which is not only talking about seeking adventures and that, but you're looking at the ports and the excursions, which some of these are secondary things that you're going to look at. One of the biggest things, and we'll get back to it, and I'll talk about it real quick. We're talking about price range, cabins. What type of cabins are you looking? Well, yeah, I was just looking at tonight. I was doing some training, David T, on Canard. They have a 13, 14 day transatlantic cruise, which obviously is more money, but it's a good thing. But then what comes down to is the type of cabin you want. Like if you've got teenage kids, you might get two cabins, but you may want to try to get to them back to back, which that's when you really have to do your research and look at the deck. You know, if you're doing it by yourself, obviously one of the things that you want to look at is the ship you're going out of, on which port you're going out of. You want to look at the deck levels and see which decks have cabins to back, or at least maybe getting cabins that are next to each other. You know, and again, so those are some of the things that whether you use a travel advisor or whether you're doing it by yourself, are things that you'll definitely want to look at. Now, as a travel advisor, I can look at it and say, well, on this deck, we got these cabins that can go back to back, and there may be some cruise lines have where the cabins have center doors between each other, and you can go into there, or some of the cruise lines actually, like I'm not sure if it's Royal Caribbean or MSC where you have cabins where you can walk into the center and then the door split off to one goes to one cabin and one goes to the other, but they use one center door to actually go out into to the main hallway. So, but not all cabins have back-to-back doors like that, or are not always back-to-back. And again, when you're looking at prices and how much you're paying per person, you know, you're talking about inside cabins, connecting staterooms. Yes. Well, I call them cabins, but yes, the correct term would be staterooms. But they can also be cabins, depending on who you're looking at and who you're talking to. So one of the first things that we're looking at, and let me go back. It actually went ahead of me before. Again, when we're talking price range, you're looking at these. Now, some of these are pricier things, but again, this is how many different types of staterooms or cabins, depending on what you want to call them, actually have. You've got a terrace. This is a pent suite. This is a penthouse suite, a pent junior suite. Some of these are. This is a balcony suite. This is another one. Now, some of these are coming off of like Viking cruise ships. Some of these pictures, but they're this gives you the idea of what most of your staterooms will look like. And the higher, now the interior rooms are a little bit smaller. And we'll look at it more when I do more webinars down there. And I'll have different size. I'll make sure I have different size pictures for the different types of staterooms, even more. But these are just a few. A lot of these are like suites. These are your higher end prices, but then your interior rooms, which are your smaller priced rooms, usually fits 1, 2, and some of them can fit up to 4 people, because they might have double beds. If you're a solo travel, some of those rooms, the beds can be pushed together to make one queen size bed for solo travelers. Again, so it just depends on what you want. I mean, you may want a veranda, and there's a difference between a veranda and a balcony. A veranda is a little bit smaller, accessing. Balconies are a little bit wider, and you may actually have place. I mean, both will have places to sit, but you can get balconies, you can get verandas. Most of your decks, like 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, those usually have balconies. Your verandas are a little bit, some of your verandas are a little bit larger, and which means you're talking different types of junior suites, or you may be talking a specific type of suites or staterooms that are a little bit bigger. But again, depending on what you're looking at, will reflect the amount of price on how much you're actually paying per things. Because when you're looking at, again, talking prices, eventually you're talking taxes, port fees. But the one good thing is that when you do actually get the final price range of it, the port fees and all that are already incurred into the final price. So once you're set, then obviously one thing you want to think about, and I've really stressed this more, guys, as we're doing it, and that is, and I've actually am studying to become, um, I can't sell you the actual insurance, but I'm going to be someone that can working with a third party insurance, where I can actually give you quotes, kind of. I'm not sure what the right term would be, but I can give you quotes on different types of travel plans, especially if you're traveling transatlantic, Europe travel, you know, certain types of travel. You might want to think about travel insurance, guys, because one thing about travel insurance is you never know what's going to happen. You could have an medical emergency. Maybe you lose your passport or driver's license. Um, you know, maybe somehow your flight gets delayed and you miss your ship pulling out of port. Um, these are things that some of this travel insurance, and you again, when you sit down, you'll have to look at the different travel insurance plan. There's usually different types of travel protection, as we call it, not so much plans, but more travel protection. I like to call them travel protections because that's what it is. These travel protections protect you from certain things, and there's different types of travel protections that you can actually look and get at. But again, it's something that I would recommend as a travel advisor, that because you never know, especially if you're traveling sometimes during the hurricane season, when things can seriously go wrong. As you're finalizing things and you're booking things on board, obviously, you're some of the, and again, this is where the stress and anxiety comes up with it, making sure, some of the questions you get is, do you have to pay for all your whole cruise at once? Um, how much do you actually may have to put down? And that's where diligence and research comes in, and really knowing that, looking, knowing how to get a hold of the cruise line and say, look, how do I work with the down payments and things like that? Um, Travel advisors do that, and they actually, when your time of booking, one advantage to working with a travel advisor when it comes down to the down payments and all that, they actually can work with you and get that first payment in and get it done. And some of them, most cruise lines have like flex, what I like to call, some call it flex pay, some call it other type of pays, but usually where you're paying so much every couple of months till you get the cruise down, depending on how much you have to put down and how much you have to pay on the rest, depends on what your total cost is on the cruise, when your cruise actually is, and how many months between from the time you book to the time you actually embark onto the cruise. Um, but again, one of these other things, as you're looking to do things, once you get that all done, some of these other things that you need to think about is making sure, what documentation do you need? Um, there may be documentation that you need for the cruise lines for medical reasons, so that they can say, look, we need this, and they can help you work with what you need. And that point, then you would be talking with specialists from the cruise line itself to help you to make sure, maybe it's getting a scooter brought onto a cruise ship, um, you know, things like that. Maybe you need a PAP machine, making sure that you get the water and everything that you need to run the PAP machine, and making sure that you got the right connections to run the PAP machine if you have trouble breathing at night. Whatever the situation is, it's important to be looking at that, and obviously with a travel advisor, these are things that you'll want to discuss with him, and he knows who to directly go to be able to talk with that. Some of that stuff can be listed into the thing, but then the travel advisor will take it one step more and even call and talk with the cruise line to make sure that that stuff is being filled. Um, you know, some of the other things you definitely want to look about: specialty dining, things that you can do. Specialty dining usually is done so many days before you can be done so many days before you embark onto your ship. Um, and usually it can be done through the cruise line's app. Sometimes it can be done, sometimes some cruise lines won't let the travel advisor do that. Some will, some won't. Um, But usually, all cruise lines let you choose the time you want to dine, things like that. And again, all cruise lines are different when it comes to that. Again, as you're new or fairly new to cruise lines, you'll always learn about things on a cruise that you may not know of before. I'm still learning as a travel advisor on things that I'm looking. But the one thing that you want to make sure that you guys got, when you're looking at it as a new cruiser or first time cruiser, or maybe it's only your second or third time cruiser, it's to make sure that your dots are crossed on your I's, your T's are crossed. Make sure that you understand what you're wanting and what you're seeking when you're booking this thing. Whether it's an adventure or maybe it's just a relaxation, maybe it's a family adventure. you know Maybe you're looking to do excursions, which those are usually booked later on inside once you get on the cruise. On some of that stuff, make sure that you understand what your perks are, because some of the perks that you get on some of these deals come with what they call onboard credit. Sometimes you can end up getting a $50 to $100 onboard credit, which can be used for specialty dining, um, put down on the next cruise. Like if you book with them, if you sit down and talk with one of their concierge that handles looking at future cruises, you can actually use those onboard credits. So it's making sure that you understand what your perks are if you're getting a special deal for whatever cruise line you're using. And these are questions that come up constantly that some people don't always know about when they're doing it. But these are things that the travel advisor can see and understand, that says, look, this is the type of deal you're getting. This is, these are coming with certain types of perks, like the $50 onboard credit, um, you know, specialty on getting Wi-Fi package or drink packages. Hello, Samara. Welcome in. Good to see you. Good to see everybody in here, guys. Guys, if you have any questions at the end, please. I am going to tell you this, guys. Actually, on the YouTube thing, I do have a link to a survey. I would appreciate you guys, all of you, taking time to fill out that survey and sending me responses so that I know how to make these webinars better, or maybe what you would like to see on these webinars. Like I said, this is the first one, so it's touch and go. So I'm still learning some things here and how to do things. But hopefully you're getting some good information out of this. If so there's the advantage to using the travel advisors. Again, here I'm just looking at some pictures. Here we're looking at the atrium. This actually is in the atrium of the MSC Grandiose, which I am working on that slideshow, guys. I'll get with you guys in a little bit. This is the theater that's in the MSC Grandiosa. Again, this is looking from the bottom deck of the atrium that's looking up towards, when I'm talking in the atrium, it's where everybody embarks onto the ship and works up. You've got like the bar to the left, you got the center. This is the center of the ship, where most of your embarkation happens. Here you're just looking at, and again, when you're talking about cruise lines, guys, there's so many different things. When you're a first time cruiser and all that, you have to think about some of this as to, again, particularly, are you looking for an adventure? Are you looking for relaxation? Are you looking for family travel? Are you looking for romantic travel? Because if you're looking for romantic travel, or maybe maybe you're doing a one lifetime cruise that you're going to spend decent money for a luxury type of cruise, then you're looking at Celebrity or Canard, one of those higher end price cruise lines where you get like the white glove service that you can get on some of these ships. Like I know you can get the white glove service in the Havana suites aboard the Norwegian cruise lines. So those are just minor things that you end up taking into, and sometimes why that when you start looking at it and you start digging into some of these deals, and then you start looking into what perks come with what cabins or staterooms or suites, then obviously you look at it. Obviously there's the Disney Treasure. You've got so many Disney cruise lines, guys. Again, like this one, maybe you're thinking about one big family vacation, and it might be just one. Maybe you may only do one family cruise together, period. And you might want to do, and that'll make Samara happy because it is Disney. It is the Disney Treasure out of Port Canaveral. Those are things that you think about. Some of the final things that you need to go over with the travel advisor, or if you're booking it all yourself, just make sure you got everything settled on your documents. Make sure you got your passport or birth certificates, government ID, driver, or whether it's a license or an ID. Make sure you got all your medical documents that you might need to take with you. It always helps to talk with somebody that has done a lot of cruises before, or even talk with a travel advisor, guys. Especially if you have medical conditions, and people can give you tips on, okay, you need to talk to these people, because there's always specialists that can help you with some of that things. Particularly when, again, if you're looking to do your first cruise, it's important to think about a lot of this stuff. And again, it can add up. It can become anxiety and time. And I'm not saying you have to use a travel advisor. Just prepared that if it's your first time cruising, or maybe your second or third, it takes time. And sometimes, the more you do, the more then you'll know what to look for. But, sometimes if you're someone that don't like to sit down in front of a computer and do the research, that's where a good travel advisor comes in. And they'll sit with you, ask you all these right questions, and they will do all the work for you. They will do the booking. All the travel advisor is there is to find out about who's traveling, how many in a party, what are the party's interests, what are you guys seeking, what do you want out of it to make your vacations magical? And I can tell you this, that's what the Cantrell Country Travelway is all about. It's about finding that magic to make your trips very magical and that you come back smiling. Now, can I promise you everything will be perfect? No, because nothing ever goes, nothing is 100% absolutely perfect. And I'm not going to sit here and sugarcoat it. Things do get bumpy, but for the most part, most cruises go pretty good. You might have one or two small things that may go wrong, but hopefully your vacations for the most part become magical. A good thing to remember is make sure you got all your personal things that you need, your documents, checking with the cruise lines to make sure there's no changes in your embarkation, or making sure that the cruises haven't, check with your travel advisors to make sure everything is still up, make sure that the payments are being done, make sure that everything is still good with the cruise as far as your cruise dates, and again, talk with them about, maybe think about getting that travel insurance for that not travel protection. Keep in touch with your advisor. And look, even when you're on your cruise, drop if you do it yourself, you're good. But if you use your travel advisor, just let them know, say, look, your trip is going good. Let them know this. If you have because the first problem you got with something, if you book it yourself, you really have no one really, you can talk with the people on ship, but it's going to be hard to get things accomplished. That's another advantage to using the travel advisor, is that with a travel advisor, if you have an issue, you can send an email to your travel advisor or send a text message to your travel advisor. They can reach out to the cruise line and try to get it resolved as quickly as possible. Because the one thing about it as a first-time cruiser, or maybe a second or third time, the big thing you want to think about is you want your vacation to be the most magical you can get it. You want the most bang for your buck out of it. So again, if you're looking to travel, guys, this is my contact information, all of it. If you're looking to join Discord to maybe find out a little bit more about the different cruise lines and information, let me know. I can put the Discord link in there, guys. Obviously, I'm on Instagram. Every few days, guys, I'm going to actually start dropping posts that may have links to deals from different cruise ships. I'm not going to lie. That will take you to the cruise lines but I will make sure that it gets back to me. I got to figure out how to link it to make sure that those things come back to me so that I can work with you, especially if you're looking for it. Obviously, there's the travel leader thing. I did forget there's my business phone right there. You can call me. You can email me. I do have the travel leader's agent profile, which I forgot to put in there. That figures. But that's the bottom and short of it, guys. That's just some basic information for first-time cruise line people and traveling. Things to think about whether using the travel advisor and all that. Again, guys, for those that are in the YouTube channel, there is a link to a survey. Please, I'm asking you, take the time, fill out that survey, send it back to me so that I know how I can make these webinars better. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this show tonight, and all that. So we'll be back in 1 minute.
Whether it's luxury or fun in the sun, Dave's got the tips to make your cruise #1. Tune in, sit back. Cantrell Country's Travel Way. It's Cantrell Country's Travel Way, setting sail on adventure every day. From island south to ocean blue, we got your cruising covered through and through. Pack your bags and set your sights. We're cruising seas and booking flights from the ports to the waves where dreams come alive. Dave Cantrell is here to guide your ride. It's Cantrell Country's Travel Way, setting sail on adventure every day. From island stops to ocean blue, we've got your cruising covered through and through.
Okay, guys, and with that, I pray and hope you all had a great time tonight. Hopefully, you got some information out of that. I know there's people in here that are experts, like Samara, David T. They've done 1 million cruises. Dave Stragan's done a few cruises. But for any of you guys that are new that haven't done any cruises, or maybe only have done 1 or 2 cruises, hopefully some of this information. If you rewatch the play of this thing, I encourage you to reach out to me if you are looking to travel, and if you don't want to deal with the anxiety and the stress, reach out to me. Let the Cantrell Country Travel Way help you find your magical vacation by relieving you of that stress and anxiety. So with that, guys, and again, does anybody in the chat have any questions before I wrap up for the night? No questions? No comments? Anything? Let me ask those that have traveled before. Anything you guys can think? Samara, Dave Stragan. Please, guys, make sure you take and fill out the. Please fill out the survey. Does Dave Stragan or any one of you guys, if they're still in here, do any of you guys got any final thoughts from? Have I missed anything for beginning cruisers or anything that they need to think about that you guys can think of? I know I know Pete's going on, so guys, make sure well, okay. Doesn't seem like there's anything else. Guys, thank you for being here. Please, again, take your time, fill out the survey. Give me feedback, what I can do better, what I did good, how you enjoyed it, what other topics you would like to see me do a webinar on. Like I said, I've still got a couple of things I have to figure out about webinars. But with that, guys, I'm going to say, let the Cantrell Country Travel Way help you find your magical vacation. Bye-bye.